Let's recreate one of the effects from Skinamarink. So you've seen Skinamarink and you're thinking, hey, I want to do that, but I don't have an old dusty 16mm film camera laying around. Well, neither did Kyle Edward Ball, that's the director of Skinamarink, so don't worry about it, okay? We'll do it today, I'll show you. The scene we're gonna be recreating is this one with the toilet that disappears. Spooky stuff, so let's do it. I started out with getting the footage. I used my GH5 Mark II, but you could honestly shoot this on anything as long as it has manual controls. Skinamarink was shot on a Sony FX6 with between 50,000 and 100,000 ISO, which is absolutely wild. My GH5 can only go to 12,800, but that's good enough. So what you want to do is line up your shot and then push your ISO as high as possible and leave it there. You can use the aperture and shutter speed to adjust the exposure instead. We want that noise, baby! Then just, hit record and then hit stop, make sure everything's in focus. After grabbing that shot, I also made sure to grab a shot where I covered the lens with my hand. This will be useful later. And yes, I guess I could have used a lens cap, but I didn't, so sue me. Now let's edit. I started by grabbing a still frame from the video, opening that in Photoshop and using the new remove tool to paint out the toilet. Results may vary, but combining the remove tool, the content-aware fill, the clone brush and the spot healing tool, you should be able to get something like this. I then open up After Effects, import the footage and the still image from Photoshop and find where I want it to cut off, and then I add the image from Photoshop.
But Jeff, the grain in the still image is now static and it doesn't move.
There's an effect for that. Search for match grain and throw it on the photo. Set the source to be the video of the toilet and tweak the settings. Now your photo has stolen the grain from the video.
But Jeff, now there's like a double grain in there, one standing still and one moving.
First of all, it's noise, not grain. But second of all, have you seen Skinamarink? It's gonna be fine. Remember that black video we shot before? Throw it in there, place it on top of everything, play around with the blend modes, in my case add, worked well. Now you have yet another layer of moving noise that looks exactly like the sort of noise that your particular camera captures, tying everything together. Beautiful, but we're not done. Now, if you like me shot this in 4K, the comp might be getting a bit slow, so I just exported the video and brought it back into a new comp because no one will notice that it's a bit compressed, don't worry about it. In a new comp, I make sure to cut the video right where the transition happened, so I still have them on separate layers, and I add a lumetri color to the first half because I noticed that it was just slightly brighter than the second half. I then added an adjustment layer with a lumetri color to tweak the lightness and contrast of the overall image. I then duplicate that layer to tweak the colors. You could do this on the same layer, but I prefer to do it separately. By the way, if you're getting black, green, or upside down frames every now and then you know it's time to go to Edit, Purge, All Memory and Disk Cache. Whew, that feels better. Now let's get some more grain in here. Grab your favorite film stock overlays from online. You have Google, you can figure out where to get one. My only recommendation is to not grab the absolute top one on YouTube when searching like film overlay, because it'll look like shit and people will recognize it. So I start with this one, I cut it down to show only the parts that I like the look of. I make sure that it loops, and no, I didn't use a loop out expression because fuck it. I then make it black and white and I set the blend mode to classic color dodge, because that's the one that fit this one the best, but results may vary, so play around with it. I then set the opacity to 15. First layer of filth is done. Now you can just repeat this process a couple of more times with other overlays. I ended up doing this one with the overlay blend mode at 50% opacity and this one at 25% opacity on the classic color dodge blend mode. And I thought I'd be done here, but fuck it. I threw in a more clean overlay of just pure grain that I have laying around, and then I set the blend mode to overlay. Then another adjustment layer with yet another lumetri color. I took a quick peek at some reference footage from the film and decided to push more reds into the shadows and blues into the highlights. Not a lot, don't want to overdo it, but still, noticeable. Another adjustment layer, this time with the transform effect. Alt-click the stopwatch on the position property and add the expression wiggle 12,2. This means that the image will now move 2 pixels in a random direction 12 times a second. And you know what, let's pre-comp the original 2 layers into a single comp, separate the X and Y dimensions and add a wiggle expression to the Y position here as well. This time doing 2 pixels 25 times a second, to make it wiggle just a little more up and down than left and right. Finally, let's pre-compose everything and bring back in that damaged film stock footage that we used before. This time I scale it to fit the aspect ratio and I pre-compose it calling it dismap. What is that, dismap? Well, in the effects panel I search up an effect called displacement map. Ooh, that's why we called it that. And I put it on our main comp with all of the footage inside of it. I then set the source to the dismap comp and both of these drop downs to luminance. This will now distort the image based on the luminance level of the grain in the dismap comp, meaning that not only will we have grain laying on top of our footage will also slightly jerk around and distort based on what the grain is doing. Finally, let's throw in one last adjustment layer with a transform effect on it and scale everything to 102 so we don't get any weird edges from either the wiggle expression or the displacement map. Export it out, add some fitting audio design, and you're done. Here's the original scene. And here's ours. It's not a perfect one-to-one, but I think it does the job. If you want to go even deeper and really emulate film stock, there's a lot of guides on that online that you can look up. I personally really like this one by Ben Marriott. It's for motion graphics and not real video, but you can still apply several of the stuff that he talks about in there onto your footage. All in all, from shooting to editing and exporting, I think I spent like 50 minutes on this, like tops. I actually spent more time doing this tutorial than I did shooting the actual thing, so if you want to go out there and do your own Skinamarink style horror short, do it. It's very obtainable and pretty easy. That's about everything. Thank you for watching. See ya.